He was an athlete. We've talked about this. Like I
Right.
consider people like him and Michael Jackson and James Brown, and I mean, really, if you're a rock star, you kind of have to be really fit. You
Right.
can't just play 3 hour, 2 hour, whatever shows, move around like that, sing that way, play that way without being physically in a pretty healthy place.
Close my eyes and let go. Sugar my lullaby, sugar my dreams. Up is down, day is night, not what it seems. Sugar might multiply, know what I mean. Like Alice in Wonderland, stuck in between two worlds.
He's back in the States, traveled all around the world, just came back. We welcome my good friend, Jann Klose. How you doing, Jann?
Hey, Joe Kelley, what's up,
Yeah.
man? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. And you're back in New York for a bit, right?
I
Not
am.
too long. Yeah.
I'm home in Astoria in Queens.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the recent trip? I think you were in Kenya, right?
I was in Kenya, yeah. So that was more of a personal trip, although I did some business as well.
Okay.
But I was sorting my father's affairs there. He had a place there, and we're trying to get that all dealt with right now. So
Oh,
it was
your
more.
father, he passed?
My father passed away in August. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. Yeah. Sorry to hear about that. Yeah.
I'm talking about it publicly. So
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's okay. All right.
Yeah. We went through with my mom a year and a half ago like that. So know exactly what you're going through.
Yeah, but at the
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Like, and it's not, nothing is easy, and nothing. This wasn't, and it still isn't. It's a lot, as you know, to
Right.
deal with that. But I was able to do a little business while I was there as well, which is good. I get a lot of support in Africa with my songs, and I signed a new neighboring rights deal with David Gresham Entertainment, who is based in South Africa, actually, but
Oh,
the deal
okay.
is sub-Saharan Africa, and they have an office in Nairobi now, or a subsidiary that they work with there. So I was able to combine it with some some personal and some business.
So neighboring rights, explain for the uninitiated like myself and probably people
Yeah.
listening. What does that involve?
So neighboring rights are interesting because it really it affects people that get radio airplay, that get TV, that get usage of music in film, in television, on radio, online, and tracking that usage is the job of a publisher.
Mhm.
And in this case, neighboring rights they are specifically when your music is played in countries that where radio actually pays rights to the owner.
Right.
It isn't the case in the United States, for instance. Not for all, not for all. There's some, but in general, it's a big hole in the American entertainment system that FM radio doesn't pay royalties to the writer, to the songwriter.
Right.
And so neighboring rights are those types of publishing rights and that are collected by someone like David Gresham and his companies, and they get funneled to the writers. So it's
That's a good thing. Yeah.
because I have a lot of activity there, and
Right.
so money gets left on the table if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a good conversation that you mentioned because when I was working at WVOF, I know the station paid 2 organizations to have the ability to play the music, but artists would always ask, well, how does that work out for us? And I really didn't know. So I guess there was that gap, like you mentioned, right?
In the
Yeah.
U.S., it's something that a lot of people in the industry have been trying to get Congress to pass.
Mhm.
And it's there's the lobbying of the stations, of the owners of the stations, which in America is corporately owned, and they own a lot of stations. That was a law that changed, I think, like in the late 90s, under Clinton, actually, under Bill Clinton. Um, I think before that, radio stations were only allowed to I think it was 7 stations, a single entity were allowed to only own 7 stations. It was limited, and that limit got taken away then, and it became corporately owned. So you're fighting corporate rather than an individual. If you're trying to get this to pass, it's complicated.
Well, you're a few steps ahead of most musicians knowing all that and getting.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff because I'm interested in not just making music, but I'm interested in getting paid.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
And that's a tough thing in music. But
right.
Ways you just have to really find out how it works. How the money flows, and it's not easy to trace that in the music industry. It's tough.
So have you found, I mean, a career expansive as yours with the 7 CDs, putting out a new release? I think you had vinyl for your last release too, right?
Yep.
Surrender. Is it easier now, or it's just as tough?
Vinyl sells.
What's that?
The vinyl sells, so
yeah,
it's
right.
good.
Yeah,
and but yeah, I mean, that entire source of income, I never really knew that fully, because when I came into the industry, the internet was already a thing. I mean, you started playing my music when my first EP came out in 2003, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You guys were playing me then, and but things were already pretty bad.
Yeah, starting. Yeah.
So that income stream is really gone until we've replaced it with something else, and that hasn't happened. And so we have to, as musicians, we have to find other sources of income, and that's mainly through licensing music and through performances now.
And fortunately, you've kept a steady career performing live. Yeah.
Somehow I've been able to do it, and it's blood, sweat, and tears. Really, we were just talking. I had my assistant here, and we were working on some stuff together, and yeah, it's hard. It's a tough business to be in. But I don't think it's ever really been easy to be in the music industry or in the entertainment industry. I'm hearing something beeping. Someone calling you?
You know what? We've got in the studio here, we got flowers behind, like a African violet with grow lights that G put together. And I think there's a timer at this time of day. It'll turn off.
Hi, G.
Yeah, she's in the other room watching our dog, but she said hi before.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, so yeah, it's going to go off. Trust me. But let me tell you, ask you about your popularity in South Africa over there. If people go to YouTube, Jann Klose, JANNKLOSE, you will see, the rapport and connection, especially with the school children. I saw the outdoors performance you did a few years back, and the kids were like, the back and forth with you performing live was amazing. Where did that take place?
That was in Mpumalanga province. That was while we were making In Tandem in South Africa, which is the record I did before Surrender. And we partnered with Tutu Desk, which was it's an organization that brings desks to rural communities in Southern Africa. Desmond Tutu started it, and his daughter runs it now. He passed away, as we know, and I worked with them for a while, and so we would do these handover events while I was working on the record in Johannesburg, and we would drive out to Mpumalanga province and pass out the desks to the kids, and they would perform for us, and then I would perform for them.
Okay.
And we filmed the whole thing and cut it together. Actually did the editing myself together with a friend, and we cut that footage together with a song called Never Fall that's on In Tandem. And yeah, it was an awesome experience, with like working with those kids. It was wonderful.
Now you grew up in where in South Africa? What town did you grow up in?
We lived in Johannesburg when I
Oh,
was.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And I noticed you've got some dates coming up right after January, right? A couple dates.
Yeah, so we're heading to Germany, and I have a show in Hamburg on January 3rd, and in Berlin January 8th,
Okay.
and then we're in LA after that for a couple of events and shows.
Oh yeah, you're going to NAM, right?
NAMM show
Yeah.
on Marriott stage January 22nd, and the Venice West in Venice on January 26th with Marky
Wow. With Marky.
Marky Lennon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Marky Lennon and Friends. I'm a friend.
Yeah. So when you go to NAM,
Marky
what do
was
you? Oh, go
Roger
ahead.
Waters' band. He was in Roger Waters' band he did the
Oh, okay.
Waters, yeah, and he has a band called Venice.
Cool. So right off the bat, you're traveling and
Yeah.
yeah. Do you dislike traveling these days that far?
I love traveling. Once the airplane takes off and there aren't any disturbances on the plane,
Right.
it's great. But yeah, I have this discussion with other traveling musicians a lot, about the screaming children and the packed planes, and I have more of an issue with the parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when we were flying, when we were kids, we weren't allowed to do a lot of things. It was we were
Right.
much stricter. But now I think, I have more of an issue with the parents than the kids.
I've never had kids, but yeah, you see the kids kind of running the show
Oh
sometimes.
my God. It's
Yeah.
gotten so bad.
Right. Right.
It's really. But other than that, I love it. I love traveling. I love flying too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there are some airlines that are better than others, and again, the industry has just mushroomed, and we're transporting a lot more people than we used to.
Yeah.
So that it makes for a different experience.
Well, at least out of New York, you got options with airports,
Yes.
and yeah, I've got to fly out of Albany, and I was flying to Vegas last year or earlier this year. I'm sorry, and can't get direct flight, so 3-hour layover in Atlanta, and just got to
Yeah,
go with it.
they're never fun. But I try to just meet people when I'm traveling, and make new friends, and just what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do about it, so you just have to deal.
Yeah, one of the flights on that trip, this guy, I took my headphones off and he goes, "Oh, I don't mean to be nosy, but I was looking at the music you were listening on the screen. You listen to some pretty cool music." So we got to talking, and he's a DJ himself, and he was traveling with his daughter, and we talked the whole flight. So yeah, stuff
No,
like that.
it's great when that happens. I met on my way back the guy that was sitting next to me, I think on the Mombasa to Nairobi flight. He was like a tech guy, and so we had an interesting chat. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the nicest things about traveling is meeting new people. I had this lady that was sitting next to me, this English lady, sat next to me on a flight, and now she comes to all of my shows, and she was just like, "Hey, it's me."
Oh, really?
Yeah, she comes
Yeah.
to the shows, and so you never
Wow.
know who you're going to meet, and yeah, that's the beauty about of traveling is meeting new people.
Yeah. Have you got the additional pages in your passport, or do you?
Oh no, I mean,
No.
I only became an American citizen in 2021, so
Oh,
that
okay.
has a lot of empty pages.
Well, fortunately, you're young enough to be able to go out there and fill them up. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah. The last time we spoke, I think it was prior to you were getting ready to do the record release parties for Surrender,
yeah.
right? How did everything go, specifically in Fairfield, the community theater?
Oh, that was great. That was we had the Lee Lund School of Dance there with us. So
Right,
we
right.
had, at one point there were like 40 dancers on stage with us.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. But it was a circus. I mean, it was a circus.
Yeah, I with the video, you see him doing the prep to your music, and they really took to your music. Yeah,
They did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the choreographer there?
EJ. Yeah,
Oh,
she
okay.
goes by the name EJ. Eileen Javorovich. She's the teacher there at the Leland School, and she did the choreography for Sugar My for the dancers in my Sugar My music video,
Right.
and in Flesh and Blood, she did the choreography for that. We filmed that up there, so those are great experiences.
You released a bunch of singles off Surrender, right?
Yeah, I think there
Yeah.
was 5 or 6 of them
Yeah.
altogether.
Wow. But a lot of yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think, if it can't be a single, make sure it's a really damn good song.
Yeah. Right.
Put it on a record, I'm a big believer in no fillers.
Right. Right. It's power packed. Yeah.
I want every
So
song to be good.
right. Now, let me ask you specifically about the collaborations you've done throughout your career, but recently, an interesting one, DJ Kosher. We've played that song on the air, "Love Is a Verb," and yeah, talk about hooking up with DJ Kosher.
Love is a Verb. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I met him. He's a South African. His real name is Colin Scher.
Okay.
He lives in Cape Town. Has a studio there, and he DJs, he produces, he does a lot of different things, like most of us.
Right.
And now, I think in the music world now, we all like wear more than one hat. You kind of have to. So I met him at a BMI writers camp, and we didn't write together. Like they didn't put us together for whatever reason, but we kept in touch. And when I was on tour in South Africa a year ago with Surrender, he said, "Hey, let's come into the studio and let's write. If you want to do something." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Great." And so I went to his studio in Cape Town, and he had this idea for this song, for this title, "Love Is a Verb," about writing about how love. How do you use love? We use the word love so lightly. Hey, I love you, miss you, love you.
Right.
And so his approach was, and I really liked this idea. How do you take action with love? Like, what are the things that we do, or can do, or should be doing when it comes to exercising love, and not just talking about it, but taking action? So that was the premise of the song. Then we came up with the whole structure, the verse and the chorus, and did like a basic demo of it. And we had a few lyrics. Then I finished the lyrics in New York and he produced the track in Cape Town, sent me the track, and then Marcus Dembinski and I recorded the vocal. My producer here in the US, who produced Surrender and who I'm working on all the new stuff with now too. He produced the vocal, and we sent the vocal back to him. We did it right here, and this right.
Oh, yeah, where the Grammy is. We can't see the Grammy on the wall, but it's next to the map on the wall.
And the nomination plaque, I should say.
Oh, okay.
And we sent him the vocal back, and he dropped it into the track, and it came out, and it charted. We did all right with it. It had a nice little. It still has a pretty good life, actually. Then we did a lyric video, and it has, I think, almost 100,000 views on YouTube now. It's so funny how YouTube has become sort of my place. For I love visual, so I prefer anything YouTube over Spotify. I'm not a big fan of Spotify anyway. That's right. but is what it is.
Right. Well, this interview audio will be up on Spotify, but
I love Spotify.
Yeah. But the thing is, YouTube is what we focus on now too, because
I love making videos too. I love the visual aspect of music.
Yeah. So I mean, you've always put out videos and interesting stuff recorded all around the world in New York and everything. Talk about filming in New York for videos and the different locations. And is it difficult filming in New York for a video, or
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you have to know where to go. I mean, you have to find spots in New York that haven't been used before.
Oh,
Because
okay.
people love New York and they love shooting in New York, movies, TV shows. I mean, sometimes they shoot TV shows on my block.
Oh, really?
They
Oh,
block
yeah,
off,
Astoria. That's yeah,
they had like Blue Bloods or whatever that show was, and they blocked off the whole street. And I was kind of annoyed because I couldn't park my car.
oh,
But
okay.
yeah, we know we want people to work in the entertainment industry, so you don't
Right,
say
right,
you just kind of go, okay, no problem. It's
right.
just. But anyway, long story short, I think it's hard to find locations that have not been used
Mhm.
as much, and you have to find gems, and for that it means you have to really spend a lot of time looking for them. So, but yeah, I mean, New York there's always something going on. There's always a backdrop of something happening, good or bad.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're right in the action of everything, you know?
Oh yeah,
I
always.
only lived, I think I told you the story. I lived, in Manhattan in Greenwich Village for 3 months my freshman year at NYU,
Oh wow.
and,
Tell me about
Rick Rubin, the guy, the producer, he was living in my dorm starting Def Jam
it.
Records. I didn't even know who he was, you know? But I saw a documentary and LL Cool J was coming into our dorm and, just when they were starting out, so
And you were like,
mm.
"That's where I lived."
Yeah, Weinstein, Hall on University Place, so, yeah, but he's done pretty good, Rick Rubin, for himself.
All right, yeah, he's done all
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
right. Now, let's ask about, the background with Broadway and musical plays and your music working into, productions like that. It's always been interesting. How did you gravitate towards getting your music into plays, and do you have any future plans to do something like that?
I mean, I would love to do more of that. It's extremely time consuming, expensive, and it takes a really long time to get something mounted because you have to really get the right people together, the right timing, and you have to have budget. It's expensive. It's when it works, it's amazing
Mhm.
because the community that exists in theater is very powerful. When you're in a room with people that all want to do the same thing, it's the most gratifying feeling. Because you feel like you're part of a vehicle, and you're only like a little piece, a mirror,
Right.
whatever, on the car, and everyone has to pull together to create something beautiful. So yeah, I mean, I've done several different projects with people as an actor, singer actor. When I first moved to New York, I did Jekyll and Hyde, I did the Broadway, I did the Who's Tommy, I did Jesus Christ Superstar in Europe. I was in those shows, and then I started, you know, pushing my songwriting career and recording artist career. And then in 2005, I did a show called Moonlight Interior with a guy named Yoel Cassell,
Yeah.
which was awesome. And I'm still like pushing him to like pick that back up. And he keeps saying it, but like I'm waiting for him. Yoel, call
Is
me.
is he still out in Boston?
He is in Boston. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a
Yeah,
professor,
nice guy.
so yeah, he's lovely. He's one of
Yeah,
my favorite people in the whole world. But he has a sabbatical coming up, and he says, he wants to work on the show. We'll see.
yeah,
Again, it's one of those things, like until something happens, nothing happens,
yeah.
and
I
there's only so much you can do.
Well, you're putting the pressure on. If he watches this, then,
Yeah, maybe
you're poking him a little bit.
we're talking about him. Maybe
Right.
he'll
Yeah,
it'll kick him. It'll kick him
yeah.
a little longer.
Right. I
That's the
thought it was really cool because the theater itself was like in an office building, right? Kinda I don't
the theater that we did it initially in was the Black Box. Was a Black Box theater
okay.
in in Manhattan in Hell's Kitchen on, I think, Sandy Shurin Theater. That's the name of it.
Yeah. And you
40
had, the party before was really cool. Yeah, it was nice. Thanks to invite us.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't believe you remember that, but
Yeah.
it's a long time ago.
Right. But yeah, we had a great time and,
Oh, it's so much fun, man. That
right,
was, I mean, we almost died doing it, but yeah, it was fun.
right. Now, let me ask you another thing.
Sure.
I need to know, how did you learn to do Prince splits?
How do you know about that?
I had to spring that.
I've done them in a while. I mean, I see if I could still do them. Not
But
right now.
you actually were doing that.
French first.
Yeah.
Prince splits. Yeah. I mean, I'm like the biggest Prince fan other than you.
No, we're all Prince fans.
Yeah. I mean, like, he was the best. He
Right.
was the best. And he left us such a legacy of music and great collaborations and writing, performing, forget it. But yeah, when I first saw Prince, when I discovered Prince, it was on the radio. I was in Germany. I was a young teen, and I think he was touring with like Love Sexy or something. I didn't
Yeah.
discover him until around that time. And I would watch him perform and be like, I want to do that.
Right.
I mean, I do something quite different, I think, than he does, but he was one of those people that really inspired me to pursue the career of being a songwriter and being a performer specifically, because he was such a great performer.
Right.
And when he would do the splits, I would be like, I have to try to do that.
Yeah, when he stopped doing the splits, I was like disappointed because that was part of the appeal. He was a great
Well, he
dancer and
hurt
everything.
himself. I mean,
He hurt himself, and that was pretty much his detriment to the end, which caused him to go in other direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know a lot of those stories because you're very tight with a lot of the revolution.
Yeah. So New Power Generation. Yeah. Yeah.
New Power Generation, like all those great bands, that he put together. And yeah, I mean, he was an athlete. We've talked about this. Like I consider people like him and Michael Jackson and James Brown, and I mean, really, if you're a rock star, you kind of have to be really fit.
Right.
You can't just play 3-hour, 2-hour, whatever shows, move around like that, sing that way, play that way without being physically in a pretty healthy place. And I mean, in his case, in Prince's case, he injured himself. He injured his hip in a really bad way, and we don't really know how. But I mean, like, if you watch him do that,
yeah,
you go, "Ow!"
Right. Yeah,
you don't go, "Ow!" But
right.
And so, but I would copy like some of that stuff, some of his moves. I don't really do that so much, but for me as a fan, I was more interested in it as a fan. And yeah, I did the splits and I do them pretty well. I mean, I haven't done them in a while. I could probably manage to get like something close to that.
Well, I can't join you on stage. I got to start tomorrow physical therapy for my left knee, so I'm out of action.
Yeah, you got to be careful,
Yeah.
And you can injure yourself even at a young age, and you can hurt yourself, and it can have effects later on in life.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned Love Sexy. I'm thinking back. You've probably seen the video. The tour was from Dortmund, Germany.
Yeah.
That they released. Yeah.
Love that film. Yeah.
And Kat, the singer from the group, just passed away about a couple months ago. Yeah. So something interesting. I don't think I've talked to you too much about this when you stopped by the show, but you were the singing voice for a Tim Buckley production, right?
Yes, in the movie Greetings from Tim Buckley.
No, what went into that? And obviously you're a big fan of him, right?
Interesting story. Yeah. So that's that's kind of there's a lot to that. So the way it happened is I discovered Jeff Buckley when I kind of started playing songs and writing and started playing out in school in the late 90s. I discovered the Grace album, and someone gave it to me. I don't remember. I think somewhere in Youngstown, I was at a gig. I mean, I was a kid, and I discovered this guy, and I listened to the record, and it had already been out for a few years. And I loved the record. The songs on it were just so great. The performances, everything, the production, the playing, it was just really good stuff. And then I remember reading in, I think it was Rolling Stone that year, like 97, that he had drowned and I was like, wow, what the hell happened here, And then I kind of put it out of my mind, and I was just trying to like find my own way in life and work and whatnot. And people would say to me, "Hey, you sound a little bit like Tim Buckley," and I was like, "I don't know who that is." And it's like Jeff Buckley's father, and I was like, "Oh, Jeff Buckley had a father," and like I kind of like made a mental note of it, and I'd listened to Grace like up and down, and I kind of had moved on. Like I'm kind of like I'm the kind of musician that will listen like a book. I'll read the book and I'll just absorb it, and then I'll move on to something else. Like I
Right.
did that this year with Michelle Ndegocello's album, which is amazing, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's my favorite record of
Wow.
2024, Michelle Ndegocello. She wrote an album about using James Baldwin's poetry. It's great. You should check it out. So at the time, I kind of put it out of my mind, and the whole Jeff Buckley thing. I always would listen to it ever so often, and then I think it was like 2007, 2008, something like that. There was a tribute that had already taken place for quite a while in Chicago at a place that Jeff used to play, called Uncommon Ground, a club in Chicago called Uncommon Ground. Cute place, good food, good beer, live music, original music, singer-songwriter type of venue. And they would have these tribute concerts there. And so I was like, oh, I know all these songs. I should, apply and see if I get the gig. And I did. And it was Sonic. Remember Sonic Bids? Remember that website?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I used Sonic Bids, and I would submit all the time to stuff, to try and get gigs, And
Right.
nothing, I never ever got another gig from Sonic Bids. They're no longer around.
Right.
I never ever got another gig from them. That was the only one I ever got from Sonic Bids.
Wow.
The only one of all the ones I submitted to. I would always like be like nothing again. And then all of a sudden, ding! It was like, oh yeah, we'd like to offer you this gig.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't like a money gig. I don't think it paid anything, quite honestly. But it was like a prestigious gig, and I was like, well, it would be good networking, and I think it'll attract an interesting community, and it did.
Right.
Play those gigs, and they raised music for, I think it was Old Town School of Folk in Chicago, which is a great venue. And they invited me back the next year, and then on that third year that I did that gig, and I would just book other shows around it, because this was like a sort of, natural way to just get in front of people, because they were always sold out when they did these shows. And I think the third year, Jeff's mother was there.
Mhm.
And so I met her, and she was lovely. She was lovely lady, and we got on. And then Gary Lucas, who was Jeff's collaborator. Jeff was a singer in his first band. The first band that Jeff sang in was called Gods and Monsters, which was a band that Gary Lucas still has to this day. And he would be a different singer. He'd hire different singers for it. And when he met Jeff, he hired Jeff to be the singer in this group called Gods and Monsters. And Gary Lucas was doing his own Buckley tributes in the city at the Knitting Factory at the time, also no longer around. Uncommon Ground is still there, though. And he asked me to sing at it, so I did. And then Gary and I just kind of hit it off, and Gary was like, "I love your voice. We should do something together." And I said, "Sure. What do you want to do? So I was like, "Yeah, let's write." So we got together and we hit it off. He had these guitar, he basically wrote with me the same way he wrote with Jeff, and it's featured in the film. Like there's scenes with you see someone playing Gary and someone playing Jeff. Penn Badgley. I'm trying to remember the actor. It'll come to me. The guy that played Gary Lucas in the film. Anyway, you can look it up. So there's scenes with Gary writing Grace and Mojo Pin with Jeff. With all the guitar parts and Jeff's character improvising, and that's basically what we did. Because Gary only had one way. He basically only wrote that way. He would have these guitar pieces that were some of them highly complex, and and sort of very progressive pieces. They weren't really like pop songs, you know. So I would be like, Gary, this part, you know, keep this part. That's the verse. This is the chorus. This is the bridge, you know. And then as we did this a couple times, and we like came up with these couple tunes, and we really liked them. And I was hanging out with Dan Beck a lot at the time, still a very good friend of mine. I'm seeing him at the NAMM show in January in LA. Dan Beck was worked for. He was the VP of marketing at Epic in the 80s and 90s, and he was Michael Jackson's product manager. You know, like he was like one of the guys at the top at Epic before the collapse of the traditional music industry. He started the V2 label for Richard Branson. You know, he signed Moby. He was like that guy. So, and I knew Dan through my friend Kink Kume, who was a promoter in Japan. And she connected us, and Dan and I, and then Gary had been friends with Dan already. So he was like, "Do you know Dan Beck?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, I just." So it was one of those things where it was like, "Oh wait, we know the same person." It was like, maybe we can get Dan to, you know, help us with this project, and because Dan was a lyricist as well, songwriting, you know, did lyrics for different songs. And so, and then we met and we hit it off, and it became Stereo Opticon. So we did this album together called Stereo Opticon, Gary Lucas on guitar. It was very simple. It's just guitar, vocals, that's it. Mostly that's it.
Okay.
And there were all co-writes between me, Gary, and Dan Beck. And at one point, while we were making this record, Gary was like, "Oh, they're making a movie about Jeff." And I was like, "Oh, who? What's the movie?" He was like, "Oh, there are several movies. In fact, they were making 3 different movies about Jeff at the time."
Wow.
Mary Goubert, Jeff's mom, she was trying to do a Broadway show and a movie. I think maybe not at the same time. I went to one of the readings of the play, and but Mary wanted to make her own movie, and Dan Algren, who directed Greetings from Tim Buckley, also wanted to make his own movie, and he did, and he just did it quicker.
Right.
You know what happened, and Gary was hired to help with the music, and at one point, Gary came up to me and he was like, "They're making this movie and they're looking for someone to cover the vocals for Tim," and I was like, "Why?" My first question was, "Why?"
Right.
Don't they have a singer, you know, that, because the movie was in the can already. The movie was done. So basically what happened is they didn't feel like the vocals that Ben Rosenfield did, who played Tim Buckley in the films, Penn Badgley, Ben Rosenfield. I mean, there was a lot of people in it. It's a cool film. You should look it up. And they just didn't feel like his vocals were strong enough and the guitar playing was strong enough. So they were looking for somebody to dub their lead actor.
Oh, okay.
Which is, of course, something they didn't want anybody to know.
Right.
And I don't talk about this a lot, you know, because even now, like, you know, I still feel like what a strange situation that was. But you know what? Whatever. It's now 10 years ago that this happened, so I should talk about it more often. I talked about it at the time, but it was really kind of pushed down by you know, and I could see why.
Yeah.
They didn't want anybody to know that their lead was being dubbed. And so I went in and did an audition for Dan, for Algren, and I was the only person that auditioned for the part, and he hired me on the spot.
Wow.
I prepared 2 Tim Buckley songs. I sang them with guitar.
Okay.
And he hired me. And I went in and did the parts for 3 songs. I had to dub the guitar part as well. And they didn't record to a click. So I had to like play along to like tempo. It wasn't easy, Joe.
Right. I can imagine. Yeah. Are you watching the actual film while you're singing?
The film, and I'm playing along to the guitar part. I'm watching the film and I'm singing along to the vocal.
Wow. So,
yeah. And we did it in a day at Steve Adabo's studio here in New York. Good friend of mine, Steve.
Right.
And so then I was like, okay, well, that's it. They paid me. It wasn't a lot of money, but I was like, okay, well, this will be a nice credit. But then they didn't really want us to talk about it. Of course,
Yeah, right. Yeah, they didn't
know,
want to give the studio secret. Yeah.
yeah, it's been 10 years. Penn Batch, they didn't want people to think that Penn, who played Jeff, didn't do his own singing.
Right.
And he did all of his own singing, to be very specific.
Mhm.
So then what happens is, I only tell the story at parties usually, but I've talked about it in my podcast a couple of times,
Right. Making sound. Yeah.
sound, yeah. And I talked about it here and there a little bit, but so then they were like, they called me back in to do some more stuff on it. There was some other things that they wanted to add that they liked that I did, and so I did. And then at one point there's a screening of the film at a little production studio somewhere, in on the west side. I don't remember exactly where. It's a small little screening room, and I walk in, and I go to hit the loo, come back out of the loo, and there's Al Pacino.
Ah.
I'm like, what's Pacino doing here? And so, but then I put two and two together because I had heard that Tribeca was interested in releasing the film.
Ah, okay.
Tribeca is Robert De Niro's production company that he co-owns with Al Pacino. I don't know if they still own it together or not, but Tribeca Film Festival, all of that is attached to that.
Right.
So, but this was actually true. So they wanted to release the film, and Al Pacino was there to watch a screening to see if he liked it.
Oh, wow.
So I was just like, whoa, and
Yeah.
it was very hush hush. The whole thing felt really kind of strange and a little bit weird, because it was Buckley, and we knew there were other films that they were trying to make, and he didn't get the rights from the Buckley estate. Like Mary Goubert denied the rights of Jeff's music, so it's all Tim's music, which is quite frankly just as good.
Mhm.
And there's a much larger catalog to choose from because Tim Buckley made 8 albums.
Right.
And I later became friendly with Larry Beckett, who wrote the lyrics to most of those songs, like Song to the Siren, which I've recorded. And
Right.
Larry wrote a book called Song to the Siren with his poetry, and Tim's music in there that just came out too this year, and that I played at. So Larry and I have been friends for a long time. He's a great writer. So we're in this little screening room, and it's kind of quiet, and nobody's talking, nobody's saying anything. It's kind of dark.
Right.
And like Gary is there, and I'm like, "Hey man, what's up?" And he was like, "Hey." And we're like, "What's happening? He's like, Al Pacino here. What the fuck is going on?" So, and I sit down, and Gary sits down on my right. And there's really only like, a couch, 2 couches, and like 4 like couch chairs sort of next to each other, and the screen, and like 3 rows of these. It was a small screening room. And Al Pacino comes into the room, and I'm like, "Oh my God, please don't sit next to me. Please don't sit next to me. Please." Because I was nervous,
Right.
and I was like, what is my role here? Like it was very confusing,
And you couldn't talk about your role, right?
couldn't. No, not really. I
Right.
was afraid I'd say the wrong thing to the wrong person,
Right. Right.
And so it was and I was at a weird career stage too. This is, now 13 years ago, when I was just kind of like starting to like come up a little bit and have some successes, and and so forth. And so of course Al Pacino sits down right next to me.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. And there he was in his oversized suit he had like a Starbucks coffee, and
Did he have a scarf?
a scarf, and yeah,
Right.
the whole bit. Like
Yeah.
it's exactly what you think. But
Right.
he made eye contact with me walking in. Like he stared right at me, and I stared right at him, so it was no question like who that was. And I'm sure he figured out later who I was and what I did, because obviously they must have talked about that. I'm sure they
Right.
did, like try to hide that from the people who ultimately released the film and paid for the distribution, etc. And so, but not a word was spoken. Nobody said anything. They screened the film. It was a rough draft at the time, and it was already pretty good, and I'm hearing myself sing, and like Al Pacino sitting next to me. It was bizarre, Joe. It was bizarre. It was.
You didn't nudge him and say, "That's me. That's me."
No, because, like I was like, what am I going to say to him? Like, hey man,
Right.
what's up?
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
that guy,
Right.
So, we left and the movie came out. They invited us to the premiere and they discouraged us to talk about it publicly, what my role was. But I still put it in my bio because there were a couple other people that weren't so happy with some of the things that happened. And so I used it as a, biographical. And I went on and did my thing. I released a record called Mosaic. I put a Tim Buckley song on it. I talked about it in interviews. They put me in the credits as featured vocalist.
Right.
So I was like, well, yeah, that's what I did.
That's right.
I'm on the soundtrack. Okay.
Yeah.
And,
And Al Pacino has sat right next to you, listening to your voice.
Yeah.
For a movie. That's pretty cool.
And we premiered at Tribeca Film Festival. It was the premiere film. It was another one of those situations where I'm like walking down the red carpet going, nobody knows that is me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
Strange.
Story. Yeah. Most of us never know the story behind that. And,
well, now you know.
Yeah, there we go. Speaking of your voice, which is amazing voice. Now you're one of the few voices in the music business I could say does not need a microphone. It's that powerful and engaging when you perform live. How do you keep the voice going strong all through your career? And do you do anything special?
I watch my physical health overall.
Okay.
Because you need to be in good physical health to perform. We were talking about this earlier. I run pretty regularly, about 20, 30 kilometers, sometimes more a week. And I try to eat right and, not party too much and moderation,
Right.
I try to do everything and, I try to just keep myself healthy and fit. And I try to use good technique. I work with singers too. I coach some, I have a few voice students as well that I work with and produce and so forth. So I try to apply my knowledge that I learned from my singing teacher to my students and to my own singing. And you can't always, the biggest enemy that singing and performing has is the lack of sleep.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes, if I get enough sleep, voice is fine. If not, it affects it. That's the first thing I would say. I would make sure get enough rest. It's very important. And don't speak with a vocal fry. Don't talk like this. If you do this, you're going to hurt your voice.
A lot of kids do it these days, right?
It's popular, but don't do it.
Well, you traveled all over the world. Dialects in and out, I'm sure.
Well, I listen to them, and I have a good ear, I think, and so I can sort of mimic, relatively easily, without even knowing it necessarily. But I try to learn the meaning of whatever words I'm singing in another language because I want to know what I'm saying, obviously,
Right.
So
there's a clip on YouTube. This had to be 13, 15 years ago. You're doing "Hold on Me" with the band behind you, but you start a cappella before it. What? Oh yeah, right.
And okay, yeah.
And it's like your band's amazing
stuff, Joe.
What's that?
You find all the
see YouTube. Say we were talking about YouTube, but the thing is, I thought to myself of like when the saxophonists hold the note for so long or change it and without stopping, and even the background singer who was in your band at the time, she was amazed at what you were doing on there. Where was that filmed? If you remember, you had a violinist, an accordion. Chris was playing bass.
Probably Rockwood.
Oh, okay.
Also is gone. That just closed. Rockwood Music Hall. Ken Rockwood. He had this club. It was great. And it was probably Rockwood Music Hall because that's kind of where we started building out of. Yeah.
Now, a couple other collaborations before we wrap it up. I wanted to ask you, Rachel Flowers, one of your more recent ones. You have a
I wandered with footsteps laced with the memories of ancient songs,
telling the story unfolding within me, a forest above the sea. I see a
because she had collaborated with Annie Haslam from Renaissance, who I've collaborated with many times as well. And so I'd seen her name in the prog, in the progressive rock music scene. And Ellie said, you should check her out. And so I did, and I had this song called "The Lost Kingdom" that I wanted to release, that I'd written with Annie Haslam years ago. And Annie's retiring; she retired from singing, and so I said, well, let me find someone. I want someone else on it. I don't want to just do it by myself. I'd rather have a female vocal on it because it's good for the song. It's good for the production, the overall experience of the track, and it ties into why we wrote it in the first place. Because it was meant to be a duet. And so I asked Rachel, and she heard. I sent her the song, and I was like, "Do you want to sing it? Do you want to? Annie can't do it. Do you want to do it?" And she was like, "Yep, I'll do it." So she did her vocal in California and did piano on it. She's a great musician. I mean, she's an amazing, amazing player. And then we premiered it at Progstock in New Jersey.
Wow.
It's a big prog like progressive music rock festival. And yeah, it turned out great. I love it. I love it. I love the song. I love her performance on it. Very beautiful. Marcus Dembinski produced it again. He's awesome.
Who you're still working with, yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll be working with Marcus for as long as possible.
Okay.
From me.
What's that?
Until someone steals him, I'm gonna just work. I love working with that.
Yeah, stick with success and come.
Oh, so talented.
Yeah. Another video where I checked out was you and Alex talking about collaborating on a particular song off the Surrender.
Alex Forbes?
Yes, Alex Forbes. Yeah. It was like a real brief clip. You were talking about working together on a song. Tell us, you and Alex, how you became connected.
Alex reached out to me after she saw or heard Love You the Most.
Okay.
Which was a single that I released with Alicia Madison in 2019. That
cool video. Yeah.
Became a top 40 hit here in the US.
Right.
And it was in a movie called, it was used to promote a film called Married Young, which is an Amazon rom-com.
Okay.
And they put it on the soundtrack, and we did a music video, and it blew up on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll make it through somehow. I promise I won't let you down. I'm gonna love you the most. You're shining light.
And then we, went to radio with it, and Alex heard it. We've been friends because we met years ago on the Forbes yacht, believe it or not.
The Forbes yacht?
Steve Forbes, Steve.
Oh, yeah, right.
Steve Forbes is her uncle. She's a Forbes.
Oh, okay.
And this is years ago. This is when I first came to New York, like 20 years ago. I was invited by a friend who was in the media at the time, DeRoy Murdoch. He's not related to that Murdoch.
Right.
Forbes is related to Forbes.
Right.
Anyway, he's a CNN commentator at the time, and we'd met at some event. I don't remember, because I was going to everything. I was trying to just network, and I would just like crash parties, and I would do anything just to like meet people,
Right.
Because it was scary.
Ambitious, yeah.
Yeah, it was a scary place and time, but I was like, this is it, I'm here. I just gotta meet as many people as possible. And so that's how I met DeRoy, and he knew the Forbes. He knew Steve. I don't know how, but anyway. So Steve, they take the yacht, the Forbes yacht, up to West Point once a year, and they do like a little party there, and and they go to a game, a football game, And so he was like, hey, you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, do I? Yeah. Do I ever? Let's go.
Right.
Who knows who I'm going to meet on that boat, you know? And I
Right.
met Alex there.
Did you have your white sailor suit on?
No, I was just, you know, a kid, like trying to
Right.
like make connections.
Right.
And I don't remember what I wore, Joe. I don't, you know, I was like probably dressed up decently. Probably
Right.
wasn't wearing a hoodie.
Classy hoodie. Yeah.
Look, you know, like
Right.
trying to dress to impress. And
Right.
and I met Alex, and but we never spoke again until years later.
Wow.
But when Facebook came up, I think we became friends on Facebook. It was probably around that time. And I think she just kind of followed what I was doing, and I kind of followed what she was doing. But we never reconnected until Love You the Most came out. And then she was just like, hey, let's write together. I'm like, fuck yeah. We wrote Surrender, we wrote Sugar My, we wrote Flesh and Blood, we wrote Here in My Heart, we wrote Even If It Takes a Lifetime. All of these songs are on Surrender.
Right.
And yeah, we had like, it was during the pandemic. You know, the pandemic hit, and she was like, I already had COVID. Do you want to hang out? I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember she
Basically,
built up the immunity. Yeah.
That's basically what happened.
Right.
And so I would go to her apartment, and nobody was doing anything, you know. So I was like, this is my lifeline, you know, to keep creating.
Right.
And it turned into a, you know, great collaboration. One of my favorites, you know, like she's one of my favorite people.
I got to ask you an awful wall question about your collaboration with her. Are either one of you Cure fans?
I'm sure. I mean, I would
Yeah.
consider myself a fan of The Cure.
Yeah. I heard like 2 seconds, not like a Cure song, but just a Cure vibe to it in one of the songs on there. I don't know. It's stuck in my head.
Yeah, that's a great compliment. Yeah, I love The Cure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Surrender is the latest, but you're hard at work on writing new material. Now,
Yeah.
you're on the road a lot. Where do you find the best place to write? In the room where you're speaking from, or on the road?
Anywhere. It doesn't, you know, all you need is a guitar and good company and, you know, quiet.
Right. Now you said it was an Epiphone guitar behind you, right?
Yeah, that's my Pacino.
Okay.
I bought this in Cleveland for not very much money, years ago. It's used. It's a Japanese model.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now your go-to guitar, is it a Martin, you said?
It's a Martin. Yeah, my Martin's over there. A couple of them over here. Yeah.
Okay. When you travel on gigs, you bring one or two guitars?
I don't. So this is an interesting story. I don't even bring them anymore.
Oh, really? Okay.
Traveling with guitars has become a real pain in the you know what.
Right.
So I have bought a couple of other guitars and I leave them.
Wow.
I have a guitar in Germany, and I'm going to get one I'm going to leave in South Africa because it's so hard to travel with guitars. Or I get a loaner, you know, and I don't want to damage my good guitars, you know.
Right.
Guitars. So that's what I've started doing. That's
Right.
how bad it is. That's how hard it is dealing with the airlines now.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be practical, and
Yeah,
that is a good idea, especially location. But it's got to be, if you could travel cross country to do a gig.
I just don't buy the most expensive guitar. The expensive guitars, you know, they stay here, and then I just get something that's decent. It has to be a good guitar, you know, because you know you still needed something that sounds, you know, as good as possible. But for live, you know, it's a different thing. You don't need like a top end guitar because it's going to run through a system anyway, and it's still going to, you know, you're not going to hear the sound of the actual instrument anyway.
Right.
For an on-stage instrument, you know, I'm not diminishing that you should get a good guitar. I'm not saying you should get a bad guitar. Obviously, you should get a good guitar, but you can get away with not having, you know, like a very expensive instrument on stage. You know, keep that for the studio and home and writing, you know.
Yeah, you got to have the voice and the songs, so that's more important.
And you need the inspiration from the instrument, you know, because if you have a great sounding instrument, it makes you want to write, you know, because the instrument sings, you know, and has that.
So let's remind our viewers and listeners the best place to get your music and to check everything for you. You can tell our.
Click on my face.
Yeah, there you go. There he is, Jann Klose. There it is, spelled out for you.com, and and YouTube, right? All over there. And
yeah,
you're
YouTube is. I love YouTube. Yeah,
you're working with Martin in the studio again, and any tentative
Marcus.
I'm
And
sorry. Yeah.
Everett Bradley and I are writing together.
Okay.
I should mention this because this is the new stuff that I'm working on. It's great. I love working with Everett. Everett Bradley he's a current member of a band called Bon Jovi. You may have heard of them.
Are they put out one album, right?
They're Italian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, Everett was he toured with everybody, like Hall & Oates, and he was in the E Street Band for a while. He toured with Seal just last year, or this year even, I think. Yes, this year. And so he's toured with me. We've known each other for years, and we started writing together, and it's a really lovely vibe. So
he plays bass, right?
He's a percussionist.
Oh, percussionist. Okay.
He plays different instruments, but
okay.
He plays percussion and sings in Bon Jovi.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So lots to look forward in 2025, and
some remixes. We're going to do some remixes of Surrender.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With DJ Kosher involved or other people?
No, we're probably going to do David Schoenwetter, who produced "Love You the Most" and "Pilot Light," and Marcus, and maybe a couple other people. I'm actually looking for DJs that want to collaborate. So if you got any DJs listening to you, hit me up.
That's it. You can find Jann all on social media. Jann Klose. Yeah. Your collaborations kind of happen organically, so hopefully some great stuff, I'm sure, is in store for our viewers and fans of you.
Yes, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Jann.
If you use your mouth,